Hello and welcome to the Pragmatic American Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for checking us out today. Before we get any further, two things. One, it's good to be seen and good to be heard here. As you probably know, if you're one of our subscribers, most of the videos that we've done to this point have been AI generated. But it's always been part of the plan to do these more in the flesh videos, live videos of real people. We will continue to do the AI videos, especially when we need to do deep dives. But we also want to be live. We want to be real. We want to be in the flesh. We are um, wary, cognizant of being considered AI slop. Certainly don't want to be categorized as AI slop. So again, there's a place for those AI videos, but we also want to do more of this, more live stuff, and grow here at Kenny Media Group and the Pragmatic American Podcast. So thanks again for tuning in. Um, glad to have you on board. Um, glad to be here wherever you are. I'm glad to be with you. So thank you. Today I wanted to talk about something. Well, it's kind of personal in a way. It definitely affects me more than, let's say, somebody in Idaho, and that's redistricting. Um, On February 26th, our governor here in Virginia, Abigail Spanberger, signed legislation placing a redistricting question on the ballot for voters like myself in Virginia to decide on April 21st later this year, next month. This legislation goes by many names, but the easiest to rattle off is probably the 2026 Virginia Redistricting Amendment. Its purpose is crystal clear, and we'll watch a video here in a minute that really sort of like outlines exactly what the ask is. So without further ado, let's play that video.
Free and fair elections are the cornerstone of our democracy, but right now they are under threat. Over the past year, several Republican controlled states have taken the unprecedented step of redrawing their congressional maps in the middle of the decade. And they've done it for a simple reason: to give themselves an unfair advantage in the midterms this fall. In April, Virginians can respond by making sure your voting power is not diminished by what Republicans are doing in other states. This amendment gives you the power to level the playing field in the midterms this fall, and voters will have the final say over what the maps look like. This is the responsible thing to do. It's also a temporary measure. After the 2030 census, Virginia will go back to a system that lets a bipartisan redistricting commission redraw the maps. We can't afford 2 more years of unchecked power and zero accountability in Washington. Help us chart a better path forward, Virginia. Early voting begins on March 6th. Election Day is April 21st. Vote yes, Virginia. To get involved, go to virginiansforfairelections.com.
So obviously we're all for fair elections. Who's not? Um, Couple things. Before I even consider the merits of this as a voter in Virginia, I think it's important to be exact um, with the words that we use and what we're asking people to do. Um, Nowhere in there in that video, and nowhere, will you see in respect to this legislation the word gerrymandering. Um, but by definition, that's what this is. You see, redistricting is different from gerrymandering. Redistricting is when you have a census, and after the census, you take a look at it and you redraw your congressional districts based on the census and based on, ensuring geographically similar locations are voting together, communities are voting together. Basically, it's like, let's take a look at the map every 10 years and make sure that the districts make sense. Gerrymandering, by definition, is different. Gerrymandering is the manipulation of electoral district boundaries to give one political party, group, or incumbent a significant advantage over their rivals. Again, rather than drawing districts based on neutral geographic, demographic, or community criteria, gerrymandering engineers electoral maps so that the right votes are packed into the right districts in ways that predetermine outcomes, political outcomes, election outcomes. Historically, gerrymandering has been used for a lot of reasons, uh, many of them to suppress votes along racial lines. Nowadays, it's more socioeconomic and partisan in nature. Basically, today we use it like, hey, I'm in power. I'm a Democrat. We're in power in the state. We want to make sure Republicans don't win. So let's redraw the districts so that they don't win. That is what we're doing. You could say it's because you want to stop Donald Trump, but you want to win. And you're asking the voters to help you do that. A lot of people talk about rigged elections. Um, this is the legal rigging of elections, is what gerrymandering is. It's through legal ways we are going to rig elections. That's what it is. Let's just be honest. Um, Gerrymandering is not new. It's not a new phenomenon. Um, it's been going on forever, almost since the founding of the country. It's not quite foundational in that it doesn't go back all the way to 1776, but it does go back to 1788 when Patrick Henry attempted something we would recognize today as gerrymandering to unseat James Madison. But just as it should be now, back then, it was considered something you just didn't do. It wasn't until 1812 that the term gerrymandering was coined. This was in Massachusetts. There was a governor had the last name of Jerry. He started rewriting or started redrawing districts to ensure that his party would win. And Boston newspaper editor picked up on it, combined his name Jerry with salamander, which I guess was one of the shapes of the districts that they drew looked like a salamander. So hence you have gerrymandering. And again, since then, a number of states have pursued so-called redistricting that was actually gerrymandering. Again, designed 100% to achieve political gains, to legally rig elections. And what we see in Virginia is classic gerrymandering. I'm going to pull up my district. Because again, I live in Virginia, so this directly affects me. And so, without going into too much detail, I don't want to dox myself. But I live in Virginia, in Shenandoah County. Okay, in the Shenandoah Valley. My current congressional district is basically Shenandoah Valley. It stretches. Let me pull this up here. Let me do our split screen again. There you go. Look. So this is my current congressional district. And you might not be too familiar with what you're seeing here, but basically this district runs north to south along the Appalachian mountain chain, right? In Virginia, from roughly the Winchester area, right where the border with West Virginia, all the way down to Roanoke, really. So, if you're at all familiar with this area, This is the Route 81 corridor. If you're at all familiar with this area, you know what this looks like, right? This is mountainous, rural, heavy agriculture, a lot of farms, cow farms, um, deer, turkey hunting. Like these are, I don't want to say rural because it's not, we're not, it's not like everybody's riding around in horses and tractors, right? But, you know, it's not the suburban sprawl of the DMV. The DMV is very specific. We're talking about, Southern Maryland, the District of Columbia, and Northern Virginia, i.e., like Fairfax, uh, Alexandria, Arlington, Loudoun County can drop in there now, pieces of Prince William County. But really, honestly, once you get to the end of Route 66, another road many of you might not have any idea what it is. Virginia changes. It goes from that Northern Virginia DMV, really DC centric uh, community to a very rural, agricultural based community. Um, but again, the current map very cohesive. Again, uh, collective story kind of. These are the people here, right? You don't have to guess. There's no guesswork, right? The proposed district uh, is not centered around the 81 corridor. It's kind of like 66 east to west. And that's where you see a big divergence sort of in what you're talking about here. So basically we'll still have, Broadway, Newmarket, Woodstock, Strasburg, Front Royal, where you start to get a little bit suburban, right? But we're also to those very agricultural and rural communities, we're gonna latch on Manassas Park here, right? We're gonna latch on uh Fairfax and Oakton, right? We're gonna add Tyson's Corner, McLean, right? Langley. Again, there's no consistency. You can't look at this district the way that it's proposed and categorize it. What is it? You know, a lot of questions there, right? The current map. Let's do a little bit of history, right? So the current map was approved by the Virginia Supreme Court December 28, 2021, and was first used in 2022 during the midterms elections. That map itself was really the byproduct of government fumbling the will of the people. Following the 2020 census, Virginia implemented a new redistricting process through a constitutional amendment approved by voters in 2020, establishing a bipartisan commission. Obama referenced that of 8 lawmakers and 8 citizens to draw the maps. It was and still is a good plan in my estimation. Whenever you combine political bipartisanship with direct input from the people, I think it's a good thing. However, as commissions often do, they fail to reach consensus on the congressional districts by their November 21st deadline. So the Virginia Supreme Court stepped in, appointed 2 special masters, one nominated by each party, and they drew the map. With that said, as we just saw, the current map makes sense. There's genuine geographic and cultural coherence. It's not a jigsaw puzzle of shapes that resemble roadkill. Again, take where I live as a real world example. I just showed it to you, but my current congressional district runs essentially north to south along the I 81 corridor from Winchester to Harrisonburg. These are all distinctively Shenandoah Valley communities that share a rich history, agricultural economy, common infrastructure, concerns about the corridor itself, and a proud rural character. That is a coherent and a consistent constituency to answer to. The proposed map, as we saw, is different. Uh, it includes rural Broadway and Newmarket and stretches all the way to the footsteps, to the doorstep of DC, right? Um, in terms of volume of land, as we saw, most of it would be rural and lie west of Manassas. East of Manassas, that's where all the people and therefore the electoral weight is going to reside. Is this a good thing? To Obama's point, does this help the problem, the perceived problem of diminished voter power? Or in actuality, does it exacerbate that problem? Does it make that worse? Does somebody like me, does something like this further diminish my voting power? I think it does. Listen, Broadway and Newmarket are deep, deep Shenandoah Valley. Small, rural, agricultural. McLean and Langley, where the CIA has its headquarters, those are among some of the most affluent, politically connected suburbs in the entire country. Um, these two couldn't be any more different. Uh, they have virtually these two worlds have nothing, basically nothing in common in terms of economic reality, daily concerns, cultural identities, or quite frankly, what they're going to need from a congressional representative. This is classic gerrymandering. The map makers, they need to dilute the rural western vote, so they draw the district boundary to scoop up and include with those western votes a lot of large urban and suburban populations. The rural agricultural communities, yeah, they look impressive on a map because they cover a lot of acres, but those acres don't vote. The people in the East do. So, yeah, my vote's going to be diminished. My vote, because I know how they vote, uh, further, you know, into the depths of the DMV, I know how they vote, and often it contradicts mine. So, yeah, my vote is diminished. And this is what they want. This is what the people who've proposed this legislation, this is what Barack Obama and Abigail Spanberger, that's what they want. They want to dilute my vote. And this will do that. A representative in this new district that they're proposing, he'd effectively be, or she would effectively be a Northern Virginia suburban urban congressman that has a huge rural backyard that he doesn't really care about. Is that is that representation? And since we're on the topic of representation, hell, I want to call out everyone that's specifically responsible for this legislation. Representatives who, quite honestly, again, in my estimation, are not doing their jobs. Your job is to legislate on behalf of Virginians, not ensure national political victory. Your job is to make my cost of living go down. This doesn't accomplish that. It doesn't. Just as, all the bills that Spanberger just signed, including like taxes on dog walkers, taxes on leaf blowers, et cetera, et cetera. None of those things make my cost of living go down either. If anything, it seems like you're trying to drive my costs up and diminish my vote. That's what I'm getting out of Virginia lawmakers. All this really does is keep you in power, right? That's what you want. So I get it. Lawmakers who endorse this proposal are prioritizing national elections and national political power rather, over the everyday lives of people in Virginia. Tyson's Corner and rural Shenandoah County are not the same and do not have the same voting interests. Full stop. To lump them together does both a disservice, with the weight of that landing on the rural communities. Again, as designed. And this isn't a partisan critique. The same standard should apply regardless of which party draws the map. I'd say the same thing if I lived in Texas or any heavily, Republican legislated state that is trying to do similar things to basically diminish the votes of the American people. I think any politician, lawmaker who does this type of stuff should resign, effective immediately. But they won't. And you know what? That's fine. It's more appropriate that you leave that to us, right? The voters to vote not only no on legislation and legislation like this, but to vote no on you when you come up for reelection. Americans, you want change? You want to see something different from our elected officials? When you see them openly trying to manipulate you and your vote, when they ask you to do it for them, when they ask you to vote on it, they're asking you to manipulate you and your vote. Understand what's happening. Understand that you probably need to look elsewhere for leadership because these people are playing a game and we're the pieces. We are. You and I are the pieces on the board. And uh, for me, at least, that's unacceptable. So, no to the bill, no to the legislation, no to gerrymandering, no to legally rigging elections. If you want to rig an election, do it the old fashioned way, illegally, please. No to all of it. That's where I'm at. Uh, that's what I think. So, until next time, I'm Vincent, the Pragmatic American. Thanks for checking in. Peace and God bless.